A 12-year-old boy stood in front of a $600,000 Rolls-Royce, hands black with grease, staring down a millionaire who was laughing in his face. "I can fix this," the boy said quietly. The millionaire's laughter echoed across the street. But in less than 3 minutes, that laughter would die in his throat, replaced by something he hadn't felt in 20 years, pure shock. His name was Marcus Webb. And this is the story of how a kid from Detroit's poorest neighborhood did something that would make a powerful man question everything he thought he knew about the world. It was 6:47 p.m. on Woodward Avenue. Rush hour. The kind of Detroit traffic that turns a 10-minute drive into an hour-long nightmare. And right in the middle of it all, blocking both lanes, sat a pristine black Rolls-Royce Phantom that refused to move. Horns blared. Drivers cursed. Tempers flared in the summer heat. Marcus had been walking home from Jefferson Middle School, taking the long route past the repair shops like he always did. His backpack was heavy with library books about combustion engines and electrical systems. Books he wasn't supposed to check out because they were too advanced for 7th grade. But Mrs. Chun at the library didn't care about rules when she saw a kid who actually wanted to learn. Then he heard it. Not just the honking. Something else. The distinct clicking sound of a starter motor trying and failing. Over and over. Click, click, click. A sound that shouldn't exist in a car that costs more than most people's houses. The man standing beside the Rolls-Royce looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Charcoal suit, probably Italian. A watch that caught the sunlight like a small sun on his wrist. Silver hair perfectly styled. The kind of man who never changed his own tire, never pumped his own gas, never even thought about what happened under the hood of his vehicles. He was screaming into his phone. "I don't care if you're at another call. Do you know who I am? I'm Richard Castellano. I own half the buildings in this city. Get someone here now, or I'll make sure your company never works in Detroit again." Marcus stopped walking. He tilted his head, listening. The engine wasn't completely dead. There was power. The electronics were working. He could see the hazard lights blinking. But something was preventing ignition. Something simple, probably. Something that wouldn't require a flatbed truck or a $300 per hour mechanic. He stepped closer, weaving between the stopped cars. Drivers noticed him, a skinny black kid in a faded Detroit Pistons t-shirt and jeans with permanent oil stains on the knees. His sneakers had holes in them. His backpack was held together with duct tape. "Kid." One driver shouted, "Tell that rich jerk to move his car." Marcus ignored them. He was focused on the sound. Click, click, click. And underneath it, something else. A faint whirring, like a fuel pump running, but not delivering. He reached the Rolls-Royce just as Richard Castellano ended his call with a furious jab at his phone screen. The man's face was red. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the car's luxury and the cool evening air. Their eyes met. Richard looked at Marcus the way you'd look at a pigeon that just landed too close to your outdoor lunch. Vague annoyance. Slight disgust. Complete dismissal. "What do you want?" Richard snapped. Marcus pointed at the hood. "Your car. I can fix it." For a moment, Richard just stared. Then his face twisted into something between a smirk and a sneer. "You can fix it." "Yes, sir." "You." Richard looked Marcus up and down, taking in every detail. The stained clothes. The cheap backpack. The dark skin. "You can fix a Rolls-Royce Phantom." "I think so, yes." And then Richard Castellano laughed. Not a chuckle. Not a polite dismissal. A full, head-thrown-back, belly laugh that made several nearby drivers turn to look. A laugh that said this was the most ridiculous thing he'd heard all year. "Oh, that's rich," Richard said, wiping his eyes. "That's absolutely rich. Let me guess, you watched a YouTube video? You helped your uncle change oil once? You think that makes you qualified to touch a vehicle worth more than your mother makes in 5 years." Marcus felt heat rise in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. "I've been studying engines since I was 8. I work at Morrison's garage on weekends. I've rebuilt 3 engines this year. And I can hear what's wrong with your car. You can hear it." Richard's laughter intensified. People were definitely watching now. "This kid can hear what's wrong with my custom Phantom. This is incredible." Behind them, someone honked long and loud. "Move the damn car." Richard's face darkened. He pulled out his wallet extracted a crisp $20 bill, and held it out like he was offering food to a stray dog. "Here, take this. Go buy yourself something nice. And get away from my car before I call the police and tell them you were trying to break into it." What would you do at that moment? When someone looks at you like you're nothing, treats you like you're invisible, dismisses everything you know and everything you are because of how you look? Tell me in the comments. Marcus didn't take the money. He stood there looking at that $20 bill, then up at Richard Castellano's face. And he made a decision that would change everything. But would Richard let him near that car? Or would this be just another moment when someone like Marcus got pushed aside and forgotten? Marcus didn't reach for the money. He looked past it, past Richard's condescending smile, straight at the Rolls-Royce. "Keep your 20, he said quietly. "I don't want your money. I want to fix your car so these people can get home." Richard's smile faltered, just for a second, because kids who looked like Marcus, kids from neighborhoods like his, they were supposed to take the money. They were supposed to be grateful. They weren't supposed to have pride. "Excuse me." Richard's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Your car," Marcus repeated. 5 minutes. That's all I need. If I can't fix it, you don't owe me anything. If I do fix it, you let me walk away without calling the cops. That's the deal. The honking was getting worse. Someone started shouting about calling a tow truck themselves. The crowd was getting restless, angry. Richard glanced back at the growing chaos, then at Marcus. The kid hadn't moved, hadn't backed down, just stood there with grease-stained hands and steady eyes. 5 minutes, Richard finally said. "But when you fail, and you will fail, you leave. Immediately. And you never tell anyone about this. I don't need to say that I let some random street kid touch my car." Marcus was already moving toward the hood before Richard finished talking. "Pop the hood." "You don't pop the hood on a Phantom. There's a release inside." "Driver's side, under the dashboard, left of the steering column," Marcus interrupted. "Silver lever." "I know." Richard's eyebrows rose slightly. He climbed into the driver's seat and found the release. The hood lifted with a hydraulic whisper, revealing an engine bay that looked more like modern art than machinery. Everything was covered, protected, pristine. Marcus leaned in, and suddenly the noise of the street faded. The honking, the shouting, Richard's skeptical presence, all of it became background static. This was where Marcus felt most alive, where the world made sense. The V12 engine was a masterpiece. 12 cylinders, 6.5 liters. Over 450 horsepower. But right now, it was just an expensive paperweight. Marcus's eyes moved systematically. Battery connections, fine. Alternator, fine. Serpentine belt, fine. He leaned closer, listening. "The fuel pump's running," he muttered, more to himself than Richard. "So it's not electrical. The battery's good. Starter's engaging, but no ignition." "Obviously," Richard said from behind him, arms crossed. "That's why I called a professional." Marcus ignored him. His fingers traced along fuel lines, checking for kinks or blockages. Nothing. He moved to the air intake system. Still nothing. Then he paused. There. A small sound. A hissing sound that didn't belong. "Your fuel pressure regulator," Marcus said suddenly. It failed. The diaphragm inside ruptured. Fuel pressure's dropping to almost nothing before it reaches the cylinders. The engine's getting air, getting spark, but not enough fuel to ignite. Richard stared. "The fuel pressure what?" "Regulator. Right here." Marcus pointed to a component about the size of a soda, tucked between two other engine parts. "It's why you're getting that clicking. Starter's fine. The engine's trying. But without proper fuel pressure, it can't catch." "Okay, fine. You diagnosed it. Congratulations. Now what? You can't exactly replace that part on the street." Marcus smiled for the first time. "Don't need to replace it. I need to bypass it. Temporarily." "Bypass, you can't bypass." But Marcus was already reaching into his backpack. He pulled out a small toolkit that looked ancient. The kind of tools you inherit, not buy. His father's tools. The only things Marcus had left from a man who taught him that engines don't care about your skin color or your zip code. They only care about pressure, timing, and fuel. If stories like this make you believe the impossible is possible, hit that subscribe button. Because what happens next will make you rethink everything you know about judging people. Within seconds, Marcus had disconnected a fuel line. Richard actually gasped. "What are you doing? You can't just—" "Sir, with respect, please step back." Marcus pulled out a small length of rubber tubing from his backpack, the kind used in aquarium pumps, and a set of hose clamps. His hands moved with absolute confidence. He created a bypass line, routing fuel directly past the failed regulator. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't dealer approved. But it would work. "This is insane," Richard breathed. "You're going to destroy my engine." "No, sir. I'm going to start it." Marcus tightened the last clamp, checked his connections twice, then stepped back. "Try it now." Richard hesitated. For the first time since this whole encounter began, he looked uncertain. Because if this kid was wrong, if this made things worse, Richard would look like a fool for even letting him try. But the traffic was getting worse. His phone was ringing again. And somewhere deep inside, beneath years of expensive education and corporate success, Richard felt a tiny spark of something he hadn't felt in decades. Curiosity. He climbed back into the driver's seat, put his foot on the brake, pressed the start button. Click, click, click. And then the engine roared to life. Not sputtered, not coughing, roared. The V12 engine sang with a sound that made several onlookers actually stop shouting and just listen. It was the sound of $500,000 worth of German engineering doing exactly what it was designed to do. The cars behind them erupted in cheers. Horns honked, but this time in celebration, not anger. Richard sat frozen in the driver's seat, foot still on the brake, listening to his engine purr. He looked at Marcus through the windshield. The kid was closing the hood carefully, making sure it latched properly. When Richard stepped out of the car, his face had changed. The smugness was gone. The dismissive arrogance had evaporated. He looked at Marcus like he was seeing him for the first time. "How did you?" Richard started, then stopped. "How old did you say you were?" 12. 12. Richard said the word like it was foreign. "You're 12 years old. Where did you learn to do that?" Marcus shrugged, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. "Books. Practice. My dad, before he stopped, cleared his throat. Lots of places." Could one moment like this change everything? Could 12 minutes on a Detroit street corner rewrite how a powerful man sees the world? And what would happen next? Would Marcus just walk away? Or was this encounter about to become something much bigger? Richard Castellano had made his first million by age 28. His second by 30. By 45, he owned luxury car dealerships across 3 states, a venture capital firm, and enough real estate to fill a city block. He'd met senators, celebrities, and CEOs. He'd shaken hands with people whose names appeared in history books. But standing on Woodward Avenue, watching a 12-year-old kid in torn sneakers pack away a toolkit held together with duct tape, Richard realized something that made his chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't quite name. He'd been wrong. Completely, fundamentally wrong. "Wait," Richard said as Marcus turned to leave. "Just wait." Marcus stopped but didn't turn around immediately. When he did, his expression was carefully neutral. Not angry, not hopeful, just waiting. "I'm sorry," Richard said. The words felt rusty coming out, like machinery that hadn't been used in years. "I shouldn't have laughed at you. I shouldn't have dismissed you. You saved me from hours of waiting and probably thousands in towing and repair fees. And I treated you like you were nothing." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, you did." The bluntness of it hit Richard harder than any business rival's insult ever had. Because it was true. And because he could see in Marcus's eyes that this wasn't the first time. This wasn't even the 10th time. This was just Tuesday for a kid like Marcus. "How much do I owe you?" Richard reached for his wallet again. "I told you. Nothing. Deal was I fix it, I walk away." "That's not," Richard fumbled with the wallet. "You can't just fix a car like this for free. What's your rate? What do mechanics charge for?" "I'm not a mechanic yet," Marcus interrupted. "I'm in 7th grade. And I didn't do this for money. I did it because nobody else could, and those people needed to get home." Richard felt something crack inside him. Some wall he built years ago, brick by brick, between himself and people he decided didn't matter. "What's your name?" "Marcus Webb." "Marcus." Richard held out his hand. Not with a $20 bill this time. Just his hand. Richard Castellano. Marcus hesitated, then shook it. Richard noticed the calluses on the kid's palm. Rough spots from tools and work that hands this young shouldn't have yet. Traffic was starting to flow again. Cars were moving around them. Some drivers waved at Marcus as they passed. One woman leaned out her window and shouted, "That kid's going places." "Where do you go to school?" Richard asked. "Jefferson Middle School." Richard knew Jefferson. It was in the same neighborhood as Morrison's garage. The East Side. The part of Detroit that people like Richard drove through quickly with their doors locked. The part that appeared on news reports about failing schools and crime statistics. And you work at Morrison's garage. Weekends. Sometimes after school. Mr. Morrison lets me practice on the cars he's already given up on. Says I can't do worse than they already are. Marcus smiled slightly. "I fixed 4 of them. He sold 3. "What does he pay you?" Marcus's smile faded. "He doesn't. Can't afford to. But he teaches me stuff the library books don't cover. That's worth more than money." Richard felt that crack inside him widen. Here was a kid with more talent in his 12-year-old hands than most certified mechanics twice his age, working for free, learning from books, wearing his dead father's clothes. And 90 seconds ago, Richard had been ready to call the police on him. "Do you know what I do, Marcus?" Richard asked suddenly. "You're rich." "I own businesses, including 3 luxury car dealerships, BMW, Mercedes, and yes, Rolls-Royce." Marcus's eyes widened slightly. The first real reaction Richard had seen from him. "I also own a venture capital firm." "Do you know what that is?" "You invest in businesses. Help them grow. Take a percentage of profits." "Smart kid." "Exactly. And I'm looking at you right now, Marcus Webb, and I'm seeing something I rarely see. Raw talent, intuition, problem-solving under pressure. You did in 4 minutes what would take my dealership mechanics 40 minutes and a computer diagnostic system. What would you do if someone who just humiliated you suddenly started praising you? Would you trust them? Would you walk away? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because what Marcus does next is going to surprise you. So what? Marcus said quietly, "You want to give me a job? I'm 12. It's illegal." "No, I want to give you a future." The words hung in the air between them. Around them, Detroit moved on. The city breathed. People headed home to families, to dinners, to evening routines. But right here, on this corner, something else was happening. Something that didn't happen often enough in cities divided by invisible lines of race and money. "What does that mean?" Marcus asked, and for the first time, Richard heard something uncertain in his voice. Something young and hopeful and terrified of being disappointed. "It means," Richard said carefully, "that I made a mistake today. A big one. I judged you based on everything except what matters. And I want to make it right. If you'll let me." Marcus stood very still. His backpack hung from one shoulder. His hands, still stained with grease from Richard's engine, clenched and unclenched at his sides. "I don't need charity," Marcus finally said. "I'm not offering charity. I'm offering an opportunity. There's a difference." Was there, though? Marcus had heard that before. People who showed up at Jefferson Middle School with cameras and smiles, talking about investing in the community and giving back. They'd take their photos, make their promises, and disappear. Nothing ever changed. But something in Richard's face looked different. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was genuine. Marcus couldn't tell. What he did know was that opportunities like this, whatever this was, didn't come along often for kids from his neighborhood. "What kind of opportunity?" Marcus asked. And with that question, with those 4 words, everything began to change. But change for who? For Marcus? For Richard? Or for something bigger than both of them? And could a moment of connection on a busy street actually survive in a world that worked so hard to keep people like them apart? The coffee shop Richard chose was 14 blocks from Woodward Avenue. It was the kind of place where lattes cost $8 and everyone had MacBook Pros open on reclaimed wood tables. Marcus had never been inside a place like this. He'd walked past it 100 times, but might as well have been on another planet. The barista looked at Marcus when they entered, that particular look that lingered just a second too long. Richard noticed. He'd never noticed that look before. Funny how quickly your eyes open once someone made you see. "What do you want?" Richard asked as they approached the counter. Marcus looked at the menu board. Nothing had prices. That's how you knew everything was expensive. Just water's fine. Get anything you want. Water's fine, Marcus repeated, firmer this time. Richard ordered a black coffee and Marcus's water, then guided them to a corner table. Through the window, you could see the Detroit skyline catching the last rays of sunset. Beautiful in the way cities are beautiful when you don't have to live in their hard parts. Marcus set his backpack down carefully like it might break. He probably worried it might. Tell me about your situation, Richard said, then immediately regretted the word choice. Your situation. Like Marcus was a case study. I mean, tell me about your life. Your family. Marcus took a sip of water. Not much to tell. It's me and my mom. She works 2 jobs. Nursing assistant at Detroit General during the day, cleans offices at night. She's gone from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. most days. We have an apartment near Jefferson. It's okay. It's okay. The way he said it made Richard suspect it was anything but okay. Your father died 4 years ago. Heart attack at Morrison's garage. He worked there. That's how I met Mr. Morrison. I'm sorry. Marcus shrugged. It was the shrug of someone who'd had to say, my dad died too many times. The grief had been sanded down to something he could carry without bleeding. He taught you about engines. He taught me everything. For the first time, something bright entered Marcus's voice. He could hear what was wrong with a car just by listening to it idle. Could rebuild transmission blindfolded. He always said engines were honest. They don't lie to you. If you understand them, if you respect them, they'll tell you exactly what they need. Richard found himself leaning forward. Is that why you stood there listening to my car? You were hearing it. Yeah. The sound it made, the clicking, the whirring, it told me everything. Most people just hear noise. But if you know what you're listening for, every sound means something. And you know what you're listening for. It wasn't a question, but Marcus answered anyway. Edo. Richard pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then set it down. Here's what I'm thinking. Actually, here's what I know. You're special, Marcus. That thing you did today. Most adults with years of training couldn't do that. You have natural talent, but more importantly, you have instinct. The kind that can't be taught. Marcus waited, expression guarded. I want to help you develop that talent. Don't waste it. Not let it disappear because you got stuck in a system that doesn't recognize what you have. How? This is where it got complicated. Richard had been thinking about this during the drive to the coffee shop. Had been mapping it out while Marcus looked uncomfortable in a space that clearly wasn't built for people like him. If you're watching this wondering whether powerful people can actually help or whether it's all just talk, subscribe now. Because what Richard proposes next will test both of their limits and change both of their lives. First, Richard said, I want to set you up with proper training. I have a master mechanic at my Rolls-Royce dealership. Andreas. He's been working on luxury vehicles for 30 years. He could teach you things Morrison can't, not because Morrison isn't skilled, but because he doesn't have access to the equipment, the technology, the resources. Marcus's eyes flickered with interest, but his voice stayed cautious. I can't afford training like that. You wouldn't pay anything. Andreas would be paid by me to mentor you. 2 afternoons a week after school. Weekends if you want. Full access to the dealership garage. It sounded too good. Way too good. Marcus's default setting was suspicion because that's what kept you safe. Why would you do that? Because I want to. Because I should. Because, Richard stopped, searching for honesty. Because 3 hours ago, I looked at you and saw nothing worth my time. And I was completely, shamefully wrong. And I don't like being wrong. That got a small smile from Marcus. So this is about your ego. Partly, Richard admitted. But it's also about you. What I saw today was remarkable. And remarkable things shouldn't be wasted because nobody gave them a chance. Marcus wrapped both hands around his water glass. The ice had mostly melted. Outside, streetlights were starting to flicker on. His mom would be finishing her first shift soon, heading to the office building across town for the second. What else? Marcus asked. What do you mean? You said first. That means there's a second thing. What else? Richard smiled. Sharp kid. Second, I want to fund your education. Not now, you're in 7th grade. But when you get to high school, I want to make sure you go somewhere that challenges you. Somewhere that sees your potential. There are prep schools, technical academies. I can't leave Jefferson, Marcus interrupted. My mom needs me. I walk home because we can't afford another car. I do the shopping because she's working. I can't go to some fancy boarding school. Not boarding school. Day school. Something close enough that you could still help at home. I'd cover tuition, books, everything. You just have to show up and do the work. Marcus stared at him. You're serious. Completely. You don't even know me. I know enough. You met me 3 hours ago. Sometimes 3 hours is enough. They sat in silence for a moment. Other customers chatted around them. A blender whirred behind the counter. Detroit hummed outside the window, a city of people trying, surviving, hoping. Why does this feel like I'm selling something? Marcus asked quietly. The question hit Richard hard, because it was a fair question. Because kids like Marcus had been promised things before and delivered nothing. Because trust wasn't free, especially when it crossed lines that American cities worked hard to maintain. You're not selling anything, Richard said firmly. No strings. No publicity. No cameras. This doesn't make me feel good about myself. Well, it does, but that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because you're 12 years old and you fixed a problem trained professionals couldn't solve. And that means something. What would you do? Would you take the offer? Would you risk trusting someone who laughed at you an hour before? Could one person really change another person's life? Or was this just the beginning of something more complicated than either of them imagined? Marcus didn't answer right away. He looked down at his hands, those permanently stained hands that no amount of washing ever made clean. His father's hands looked like this. Working hands. Honest hands. Can I think about it? Marcus finally asked. Of course. Take all the time you need. Richard slid a business card across the table. Embossed letters. Heavy cardstock. The kind of card that said I matter. My direct number's on there. Cell phone. Call me whenever you decide. Marcus took the card carefully, like it might dissolve if he held it too tight. He tucked it into his backpack's front pocket. They left the coffee shop together. The evening had settled into that blue-hour darkness where the city looks softer, more forgiving. Richard walked Marcus to the bus stop. You don't have to wait, Marcus said. I'll wait. So they stood there, an unlikely pair under a flickering streetlight. The millionaire in the Italian suit and the 7th grader with grease under his fingernails. After a few minutes, the bus wheezed up to the curb, brakes hissing. Marcus, Richard called as the boy climbed the stairs. Thank you. For today. For fixing my car. For teaching me something I should have learned a long time ago. Marcus paused in the doorway, one hand on the rail. What's that? That talent doesn't wear a suit. Marcus nodded once, then disappeared into the bus. Richard stood, watching until the taillights faded into Detroit traffic. 3 days passed. Richard didn't hear anything. He thought about Marcus constantly. Wondered if he'd made the offer wrong. Wondered if the kid's mother had said no. Wondered if he'd scared Marcus off by coming on too strong. On the 4th day, his office phone rang. His assistant, Claire, buzzed through. Mr. Castellano, there's a woman on line 2. Says her name is Patricia Webb. She's calling about her son. Richard grabbed the phone. Hello, Mr. Castellano. The voice was cautious, measured. This is Marcus's mother, Patricia Webb. Ms. Webb, thank you for calling. Marcus told me what happened. Tell me what you offered. A pause. I needed to hear it from you directly. I needed to know if my son was understanding this correctly. Richard explained everything again. Mentorship, the potential educational support, the training at his dealership. He kept his voice steady, professional. This wasn't a business negotiation, but in some ways it felt like the most important pitch he'd ever made. When he finished, silence stretched across the line. Ms. Webb. I'm here. She sighed, and Richard heard 20 years of exhaustion in that sound. Mr. Castellano, my son is smart. Smarter than I ever was. Smarter than his father, God rested him. But we don't live in a world where that's always enough. You understand what I'm saying? I think so. I've watched Marcus work himself raw, trying to learn everything he can. I watched him come home with library books he shouldn't be able to understand, but somehow does. Watch him fix broken things just to prove he can. And I've been terrified, absolutely terrified, that none of it would matter. That the world would see his zip code and his skin before it saw his mind. Her voice cracked slightly. So when he came home Tuesday night and told me about you, I didn't want to believe it. Didn't want to let him hope. Because hope can hurt worse than anything else when it doesn't work out. Richard closed his eyes. I understand. Do you? The question wasn't aggressive, just genuine. Do you really understand what it means to watch your child have doors closed before they even get to knock? To see them be invisible to people who should be paying attention? Have you ever watched someone's dream depend entirely on whether you keep your word? Think about that for a second. Drop your answer below, because this conversation is about to determine everything. No, Richard admitted. I don't understand that. Not from experience. But I saw it on Tuesday. I was the person who didn't pay attention. Who didn't see Marcus until he made me see him. And I want to do better. I want to help make sure other people see what I almost missed. Another long pause. Then, Marcus wants to accept your offer. The mentorship, at least. We'll talk about school when that time comes. But he wants to work with your mechanic. Learn from him. Relief flooded through Richard. That's wonderful. I'll set it up immediately. Andreas, that's our master mechanic. He's expecting Marcus. We can start this Saturday if that works. Saturday works. But Mr. Castellano? Yes. If you hurt my boy, if you make him promises you don't keep, if this is some charity case that makes you feel good for a month, and then you forget about him, her voice turned to steel. I will make sure everyone knows. I don't have your money or your power, but I have my voice. And I will use it. I wouldn't expect anything less, Richard said. You're protecting your son. That's what good mothers do. All right then. Her tone softened slightly. Thank you, Mr. Castellano. Even if I'm still not completely sure about this, thank you for seeing Marcus. After they hung up, Richard sat at his desk for a long time. His office overlooked downtown Detroit, 33rd floor, glass and steel, a view that cost more per month than most people made in a year. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about portfolios or profit margins. He was thinking about a 12-year-old kid who could diagnose engine problems by sound. A kid who'd been invisible to him until 60 seconds changed everything. Richard picked up his phone and called Andreas directly. Andreas, I need you to do something for me. And it's important. Saturday morning, 8 a.m. Marcus stood outside Castellano Luxury Motors, staring up at the gleaming glass showroom. Through the windows, he could see cars that cost more than his entire apartment building. Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Mercedes Maybachs, the kind of vehicles that existed in a completely different economic universe. His mom had dropped him off on her way to work. She'd squeezed his shoulder before he got out of the car. Be yourself. Learn everything. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Now Marcus stood there, backpack on his shoulders, wearing his cleanest jeans and a button-up shirt his mom had ironed at 11 o'clock last night. He felt like an imposter, like someone would see him and realize a mistake had been made. Then the showroom door opened. A man stepped out, 60-something, white hair, thick German accent, and hands that looked like they'd been working on engines since before Marcus was born. You must be Marcus, the man said, extending a hand. I am Andreas. Come. We have much to teach you. Was this really happening? Could this moment, this chance, actually be real? Or was Marcus about to discover that dreams look different when you walk through the door? What happened next would test everything Marcus thought he knew about the world and his place in it. The garage behind Castellano Luxury Motors looked like something from a science fiction movie. 10 service bays, each one spotless. Diagnostic computers are worth more than most cars. Tools organized with German precision. The air smelled like leather cleaner and expensive machinery. Andreas walked Marcus through the space like a museum curator showing off priceless art. This is where we work miracles, he said, his accent thick, but his English perfect. Every car that comes through these doors is someone's dream. We treat them with respect. Always. Marcus nodded, trying to absorb everything at once. His brain was recording details, the hydraulic lifts that raised vehicles silently, the computer systems that could read a car's entire electronic history, the specialized tools he'd only seen in technical manuals. Mr. Castellano tells me you fixed his Phantom on Woodward Avenue, Andreas said, stopping beside a silver Bentley Continental. Tell me you did it with aquarium tubing and hose clamps. Yes, sir. That's not in any manual. No, sir. But it worked. Andreas smiled, a small, approving curve of his mouth. Sometimes the best solutions aren't in manuals. Sometimes they're in here. He tapped his temple. And here. He tapped his chest. Instinct and respect. You can teach technique, but you cannot teach this. You have it or you don't. Marcus, I think you have it. For the first time all morning, Marcus felt his shoulders relax slightly. So today, Andreas continued, we start with basics. Not because I think you don't know the basics, but because I need to see what you know and what you don't know. Yes. Yes, sir. They spent the first hour on diagnostic procedures. Andreas pulled up a car on the lift, a Rolls-Royce Ghost with an intermittent electrical fault. He handed Marcus the diagnostic tablet and said simply, tell me what you see. Marcus studied the readings. Error codes, voltage fluctuations, system reports. He'd never used equipment this sophisticated before, but the principles were the same. Just clearer. More detailed. Voltage drop in the rear electrical system, Marcus said after a few minutes. Intermittent because it's probably a corroded connection, not a complete failure. Gets worse when the car drives because vibration loosens the contact even more. Andreas checked the diagnostic history. That is exactly what the technician wrote 3 days ago. It took him 40 minutes and 2 diagnostic cycles. You did it in 4. How? Pattern recognition, Marcus said. The voltage drops are happening at regular intervals. That means something mechanical, something that moves or vibrates. And it's isolated to rear systems, so the connection has to be somewhere in the rear harness. If this kind of skill in someone so young gives you chills, hit subscribe. Because what Marcus learns in the next few weeks will prepare him for something none of them saw coming. Andreas looked at Marcus for a long moment, then smiled wider. You know what I told Mr. Castellano when he called me? I told him I don't have time for charity cases. I'm too old, too busy, too German. He chuckled, but he said this wasn't charity. He said this was an investment. Now I understand what he meant. They worked until noon. Andreas showed Marcus systems and technologies that didn't exist in Morrison's garage: advanced fuel injection calibration, hybrid drive system diagnostics, computer-controlled suspension analysis. Marcus absorbed everything like someone who'd been thirsty his whole life and finally found water. At lunch, they sat in the garage office. Andreas had brought sandwiches from a deli that was definitely not McDonald's. They ate while surrounded by technical manuals and the quiet hum of machinery. Tell me something, Andreas said between bites. Why do you want this? Why do you care so much about engines? Most boys your age want to play video games. I want to be a rapper or an athlete. Marcus thought about how to answer that. Engines make sense, he finally said. Everything else in the world, people, school, money, it's all complicated. It's all unfair. But engines? They follow rules. They work or they don't. And if they don't work, there's always a reason. Always a solution. Nothing is random. Nothing is unfair. It just is. Andreas set down his sandwich. That's the most honest answer I've heard in 30 years. My dad used to say something similar. He said engines taught him that everything can be fixed if you're patient enough to understand it. Your father was a wise man. He was. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside the office window, a car carrier was unloading a new Rolls-Royce. Probably a $250,000 vehicle. Probably going to someone who'd never even opened the hood. Marcus, Andreas said, I'm going to teach you everything I know. But you must promise me something. What? You must promise that you will not just learn. You will master it, and then you will teach others. Talent like yours, it's rare. It should not stop with you. Understand? Marcus nodded. I understand. Good. Now finish your sandwich. This afternoon, I'm teaching you about turbocharger systems. They're complicated. You'll love them. Over the next 6 weeks, Marcus spent every Saturday and 2 afternoons a week at Castellano Luxury Motors. Andreas taught him advanced diagnostics, electronic systems, hybrid technology, and the specialized quirks of ultra-luxury vehicles. Marcus learned that a Bentley's air suspension used different logic than a Mercedes, that Rolls-Royce engines had acoustic dampening systems that cost more than entire economy cars, that modern vehicles were as much computer as they were machine. But more than that, Marcus learned to see himself differently. In Andreas's garage, nobody looked at him sideways. Nobody questioned why he was there. He wasn't the poor kid from the East Side. He was Marcus, the apprentice with the frightening intuition and the sponge-like brain. He was someone who belonged. Richard stopped by most Saturdays. Not to hover, but to check in. He'd ask Andreas how Marcus was progressing. The answer was always the same: better than anyone I've trained. One Saturday afternoon, Richard pulled Marcus aside. "How's it going?" "Really?" "It's incredible," Marcus said honestly. "I'm learning things I didn't even know existed. Andreas is amazing. This whole thing is—" He stopped, searching for words. "It's everything." Richard smiled. "Good. That's good. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something." Marcus's stomach tightened. Here it comes, he thought. The catch. The condition. The thing that makes all this make sense. But Richard said, "I'm hosting a charity gala next month. High-end event. Business people, city officials, donors. It's for a Detroit Youth Education Fund. And I'd like you to come." That wasn't what Marcus expected. "Me? Why?" "Because I want people to meet you. Not as charity. Not as a project. Just as Marcus. The kid who's been training with Andreas. The kid who fixed my car. The kid who represents what's possible when talent gets opportunity. Would you go? Would you walk into a room full of millionaires as the only kid there, knowing they'd all be watching? Tell me in the comments what you'd do, because Marcus's decision here will set up the most important night of his life. Marcus stood in front of his bathroom mirror wearing a suit. An actual suit. Tailored. Black. With a white shirt and tie his mom had taught him to knot 3 times before he got it right. The suit had appeared at their apartment 2 weeks ago with a note for the gala. Couldn't have you showing up in jeans. RC. His mom stood in the doorway, eyes shining. "You look so grown up." "I look weird." "You look handsome." "You look important." She adjusted his collar unnecessarily, just to have something to do with her hands. "I'm so proud of you, baby. Your father would have been so proud." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Are you sure I should go?" "Why wouldn't you?" "I don't know. It's not my world. What am I supposed to say to these people?" Patricia Webb stepped closer and put both hands on her son's shoulders, looking him straight in the eyes. "You say exactly what you know. You are exactly who you are. You don't apologize. You don't shrink. You walk in there remembering that you earned your place in that room just as much as anyone else. What if I mess up?" "Then you mess up. But you do it while being yourself. Promise me." "I promise." The gala was at the Detroit Institute of Arts, which had been transformed into something out of a movie. String lights, ice sculptures, tables covered in white linen. People in dresses that cost more than a semester's tuition, and tuxedos that fit like second skins. A live jazz quartet played in the corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres Marcus couldn't pronounce. Richard met Marcus at the entrance. "You made it." "Almost turned around twice," Marcus admitted. "But you didn't. That's what counts. Come on. There are some people I want you to meet." For the next hour, Richard introduced Marcus to what felt like half of Detroit's power structure. CEOs, investors, nonprofit directors, city council members. Every introduction followed the same pattern. "This is Marcus Webb. He's been training with Andreas at my dealership. 12 years old and already more talented than most certified mechanics." Some people were genuinely interested. They asked Marcus questions about engines, about his training, about his goals. Others smiled politely and moved on quickly, their eyes sliding away like Marcus was an obligation they had to acknowledge but not engage with. Marcus could feel the difference, could sense who saw him as a person and who saw him as Richard's charity case. The living proof that Richard Castellano cared about Detroit's youth or whatever message he was trying to send. It made Marcus's skin crawl. Around 8 p.m., dinner was served. Marcus sat at Richard's table along with 6 other people, a tech entrepreneur, a real estate developer, a woman who ran a charter school network, a banker, and a married couple who owned a chain of restaurants. The conversation flowed around Marcus like a river. Business talk. political talk, abstract discussions about urban development and educational outcomes, and community investment. Marcus ate his salmon quietly, feeling increasingly like a prop. Then the tech entrepreneur, a woman named Vanessa Chun who'd made her money developing warehouse automation systems, turned to Marcus. "So, Marcus, Richard tells us you fixed his Rolls-Royce on the street. That's quite impressive." "Thank you. What interests you about automotive work? Is it engineering? Problem solving?" Finally, a real question. Marcus set down his fork. "Both, I guess. But mostly it's the honesty of it." "Honesty?" "Yeah. An engine can't lie to you. It can't pretend to be something it's not. If it's broken, you can figure out why and fix it. Everything follows rules. Everything makes sense if you understand the system." Marcus felt himself warming to the topic. People don't work like that. People are complicated. But engines? They're pure logic. Vanessa smiled. "That's fascinating. I feel the same way about code. Systems that follow rules. Where every problem has a solution if you're smart enough to find it." "Exactly," Marcus said, and for the first time all evening, he felt like he was having an actual conversation, not performing in an interview. But then the banker, a man named Robert, something Marcus had already forgotten, leaned forward. "That's admirable, Marcus. Really. But let me ask you something. Do you actually think you'll make a career out of this? Automotive work?" The table went quiet. "Why wouldn't I?" Marcus asked carefully. "Well, it's just," Robert gestured vaguely with his wine glass. "The automotive industry is changing. Electric vehicles, autonomous driving, the kind of mechanical work you're learning will be obsolete in 20 years. You seem like a smart kid. Wouldn't your talents be better applied somewhere with a better future? Tech, engineering, something white collar." Hit that subscribe button right now if you want to see how Marcus handles this moment. Because what he says next will make everyone at this table rethink their assumptions. Marcus felt everyone's eyes on him. This was a test. He could feel it. Everyone waiting to see if the charity case from the East Side would get defensive, or worse, agree that his dreams were too small. He thought about his father, about oil-stained hands and the sound of engines, about Andreas teaching him that mastery meant something, about the pure joy of solving problems that made machines come alive. "You're wrong," Marcus said quietly. Robert blinked. "Excuse me." "You're wrong about it being obsolete. Electric vehicles still need maintenance. I still need diagnostics. I still need people who understand systems. And the more complex the technology gets, the more valuable it is to understand not just how to read a computer screen, but how machines actually work. How systems interact. How physics and engineering meet reality." Marcus leaned forward slightly. "And you're wrong about something else too. You said white collar like it's automatically better. Like working with your hands is something to grow out of. But my father worked with his hands his whole life, and he understood things most white collar people never will. He could hear problems in engines. Could feel when something was wrong. That's not less than sitting in an office. It's just different." The table was completely silent now. "I want to master automotive engineering," Marcus continued. "Not because I can't do anything else, but because I choose to, because it matters, because someone needs to understand how these systems actually work, not just how to design them on a computer. And if that's not ambitious enough for you," he shrugged, "that sounds like your problem, not mine." Vanessa Chun laughed suddenly, a sharp, delighted sound. "I like this kid." Richard was smiling too, trying to hide it behind his water glass. Robert looked flustered. I wasn't trying to insult." "I know what you meant," Marcus said. "Not angry. Just factual. You meant that kids like me should be grateful for any path out of where we come from. That we should take whatever white-collar job we can get and forget about what we actually care about. But that's not how it works. Not for me." The real estate developer, an older black man named James who'd been quiet most of the evening, set down his fork and looked at Marcus with something like respect. "How old are you, son?" 12. 12. James shook his head slowly. "I had to learn that lesson in my 30s. You already know it. That's something." The conversation moved on, but the energy had shifted. People at the table started actually asking Marcus questions. Not performative questions. Real ones. About his training, his process, his understanding of complex systems. Vanessa Chun exchanged numbers with Richard, mentioning an internship program her company ran for high school students interested in robotics and automation. After dinner, there were speeches. The charity fund had raised $3 million. Richard gave a talk about investing in Detroit's future. He didn't mention Marcus specifically, which Marcus appreciated. This wasn't about him being a show-and-tell project. But as people mingled after the speeches, something interesting happened. Person after person approached Marcus. Not to praise him, not to congratulate him on being a success story, but to actually talk, to ask questions, to engage with him like a person worth knowing. A woman who ran an engineering firm asked Marcus about his diagnostic process. A man who manufactured automotive parts wanted to know what Marcus thought about emerging electric vehicle architectures. A city council member asked if Marcus would be interested in speaking at a STEM event for Detroit public school students. By the time the evening ended, Marcus's head was spinning. Richard drove him home, and they sat in the car outside Marcus's apartment building for a few minutes. "You handle that well," Richard said, "especially with Robert. He needed to hear that." "Did I embarrass you?" "God, no. You made me look good. And more importantly, you stood up for yourself and what you believe in. That's never embarrassing." Marcus looked up at his apartment. Lights were on in the window. His mom was probably waiting up. "Mr. Castellano." "Richard, please. We're past formalities." "Richard, why did you really invite me tonight?" Richard was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, because I wanted people to see you. Not as a project or a charity case, but as Marcus, the actual person. I wanted them to realize that talent doesn't look like they expect it to. That genius shows up in 12-year-olds in torn sneakers. And I wanted you to see them, to realize that these rooms aren't off limits to you, that you can walk into any space and belong there because of who you are. Could one night change how you see yourself? Could one conversation make you realize you're bigger than anyone told you could be? Share your thoughts below, because this night is about to trigger a chain reaction that nobody, not even Richard, saw coming. 3 months after the gala, Marcus's life had developed a rhythm. School, training at Castellano Motors, homework, more training, weekend projects with Andreas. It was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. But something else was happening too. Word was spreading. It started small. A feature in the Detroit Free Press about young talent in the automotive sector. Marcus was mentioned, a brief paragraph about a 12-year-old training at Castellano Luxury Motors. Then a local news station picked it up. Then a regional automotive magazine. Suddenly, Marcus Webb wasn't just the kid who fixed Richard Castellano's car. He was a story, a symbol, a representation of something bigger than himself. People started recognizing him. At school, on the bus, in his neighborhood. Some of it was positive. Teachers who suddenly paid more attention, classmates who wanted to be his friend. Some of it was complicated. Neighbors who'd known him his whole life suddenly treated him differently, like he'd become someone else. The hardest part was the jealousy. "Must be nice," his classmate Devin said one day at lunch, voice dripping with resentment. "Having a rich white dude gives you everything." Marcus looked up from his sandwich. "What?" "You heard me. You got lucky. Some millionaire felt guilty, and now you're special. Good for you, I guess." "It's not like that." "Sure it isn't. Meanwhile, the rest of us are still here. Still invisible. Still stuck. But Marcus Webb, he's different. He got rescued." The words stung because they contained a sliver of truth. Marcus had gotten lucky. Richard could have driven away that day. Could have never looked back. The fact that he didn't was lucky. Chance. The universe randomly aligns in Marcus's favor. But it was also more than that. "I fixed his car," Marcus said quietly. "I solved a problem nobody else could solve. That's why this happened. Not because I got rescued. Because I proved I could do something." Devin stood up, grabbing his tray. "Keep telling yourself that. Maybe you'll believe it." Marcus sat alone for the rest of lunch, appetite gone. That afternoon at Castellano Motors, Andreas noticed Marcus's mood immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "Marcus, I'm German. We're very direct. What's wrong?" Marcus sighed. "Kids at school. They think I don't deserve this. I think I just got lucky." Andreas set down the diagnostic tablet he'd been holding. "Come with me." He led Marcus to the back of the garage, where a pristine Rolls-Royce Cullinan sat on a lift. The massive SUV was raised, exposing its undercarriage, a complex maze of systems and components. "Tell me what you see," Andreas said. Marcus studied the vehicle. All-wheel drive system. Independent air suspension. Looks like there's a fault in the rear differential. You can see oil seepage. Correct. That repair will cost the owner $12,000. Know why? Specialized parts. Complex labor. Yes. But also this. There are maybe 500 mechanics in Michigan capable of properly diagnosing and repairing a Cullinan differential. Out of thousands of mechanics total. You know what makes those 500 special? Training. Partly, but mostly commitment. The refusal to accept that anything is beyond their understanding. The willingness to learn systems that most people don't care about, because most people will never own cars like this. Andreas turned to Marcus. 3 months ago, you didn't know about these systems. Now you do. You absorbed in 12 weeks what takes most people 2 years. You think that's luck? No, neither do I. Luck was Richard breaking down in front of you. Everything after that, that was skill, dedication, intelligence. Your classmate is angry because he wants what you have but isn't willing to do what you did to get it. If you've ever been told you don't deserve your success, smash that subscribe button. Because what happens next will show Marcus exactly how much he's earned and test whether he's ready for what comes next. But he's right about one thing, Marcus said. I didn't need Richard. Without him, without this opportunity, I'd still be at Morrison's garage working for free. Maybe, Andreas acknowledged. But opportunities don't just fall from the sky. They come when preparation meets chance. You were prepared. The chance came. You seized it. That's not luck. That's life working the way it should. Marcus wanted to believe that. I needed to believe it. Because if this was all just cosmic chance, if he was just the lottery winner who happened to be standing in the right place, then it could all disappear just as randomly. Andreas, can I ask you something? Always. Why are you doing this? I mean, I know Richard is paying you, but you're giving me so much time. Teaching me things you don't have to teach me. Why? Andreas smiled, that small, knowing smile he got when Marcus asked good questions. Because 35 years ago, I was you. Marcus blinked. What? I grew up in East Berlin. East, you understand? Communist side. My father was a factory worker. We had nothing. But I loved engines. I loved machinery. And there was a man, a master mechanic, who worked at the state automotive facility. He saw something in me. Taught me. Gave me his time when he didn't have to. Andreas's eyes went distant, remembering. That man changed my life. Taught me everything. And when the wall fell, when everything changed, he helped me get to the West. Helped me find work. I would be nothing without him. Nothing. What happened to him? He died 10 years ago, and I never got to fully repay him. So now I pay forward. I teach people like you because someone taught people like me. That's how this works, Marcus. We lift each other. We pass knowledge. We create chances for others because someone created chances for us. Marcus felt something settle in his chest. But maybe, or responsibility. So one day I'll teach someone. One day you'll teach many people. But first you learn. Come. I want to show you something interesting about hybrid drive systems. 2 weeks later, Richard called Marcus on a Tuesday evening. Can you come to my office tomorrow after school? There's someone I want you to meet. Who? A surprise. A good one, I promise. So Wednesday afternoon, Marcus took the bus to downtown Detroit to the glass tower where Richard's offices occupied the 33rd floor. The lobby alone was impressive. Marble floors, modern art, the kind of hushed wealth that didn't need to announce itself. Richard met him at the elevator. Thanks for coming. I know this is mysterious, but trust me. He led Marcus to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. And sitting at the table was a man Marcus had seen in magazines and on TV. A man whose face appeared on the cover of automotive journals. Michael Chun, founder and CEO of Apex Automotive Engineering, one of the fastest-growing electric vehicle design firms in the country. Marcus, Richard said, meet Michael Chun. Michael, this is Marcus Webb. Michael stood, extending his hand. He was younger than Marcus expected, maybe 40, with glasses and the easy confidence of someone who'd built something from nothing. "Marcus, I've heard a lot about you." They shook hands. Marcus tried not to look as confused as he felt. Sit, Richard said, gesturing to chairs. "Michael, tell him why you're here." Michael leaned back, studying Marcus with open curiosity. "I'm here because Richard told me a story about a 12-year-old kid who diagnosed and field-repaired a Rolls-Royce Phantom using aquarium tubing. And I thought he was exaggerating. Richard tends to embellish." "I do not," Richard protested. "You do. But then he showed me Andreas's evaluation reports. Show me your progress over the last 3 months. And I realized he wasn't exaggerating. If anything, he was underselling you." Marcus glanced at Richard, who just smiled. "Here's the thing," Michael continued. "My company is developing next-generation electric vehicle systems. We're designing cars that won't hit the market for 5 years. And we have brilliant engineers, people with PhDs from MIT and Stanford. But you know what we don't have enough of? People who understand how systems actually work in the real world. People who can hear a problem, feel a problem. People with intuition." He leaned forward. "Richard tells me you have that intuition, that you think in systems, that you can look at a complex machine and understand not just the parts, but how they interact. Is that true? What would you say? How do you answer when someone successful asks if you're actually as good as people say you are? Drop your thoughts below, because Marcus's answer here will open a door to his future or close it forever." Marcus felt the weight of the moment. Michael Chen's eyes on him. Richard watched carefully. The city of Detroit spreading out below them through those massive windows, all the possibility and all the pressure compressed into one question. "I don't know if I'm as good as people say," Marcus answered honestly. "But I know I understand engines. I know when I look at a system, I can see how the pieces connect, how one problem creates another, how to trace effects back to causes." Michael nodded slowly. "Give me an example. Teach me something." Right now. Marcus thought for a moment, then pulled out his phone. He pulled up a diagram he'd saved, a complex schematic of a hybrid powertrain system. "Okay, see this? It's a parallel hybrid architecture. Most people look at this and see the electric motor and the gas engine as separate systems that happen to work together. But that's not really how it works." He traced paths on the screen with his finger. "The power split device here, this is the brain. It's constantly balancing torque between the two power sources based on demand, battery charge, and efficiency curves. So if you have a problem with power delivery, most mechanics will check the motor or the engine. But the real issue is usually here." He pointed to the planetary gear system. "Because if the power split is miscalculating the torque balance, everything downstream looks broken even though the components are fine." Michael's expression had shifted. He was leaning forward now, actually interested. "How do you diagnose that?" "You listen, and you look at the data patterns, not individual readings. One battery reading tells you nothing. But 10 readings over 30 seconds? That tells you if the power split is hunting, trying to find balance, and failing. The pattern reveals the problem." "Hunting." Michael repeated the word. "That's exactly right. That's the term my engineers use. Where did you learn that?" "Technical manual. And watching Andreas diagnose a Porsche Cayenne hybrid last month. Same principle, different implementation." Michael sat back, glancing at Richard. "Okay, I am convinced." "Convinced of what?" Marcus asked. Richard leaned forward. "Michael's company runs a summer mentorship program. High school and college students, usually. But he's willing to make an exception." "I want to offer you a spot," Michael said. "Summer after next. You'll be 13 by then, right?" "Yes, sir." "We'll call it an early admission. 8 weeks. You'd work with my engineering team. See how we design systems from scratch. Learn CAD software, simulation tools, testing protocols. Get exposure to the cutting edge of automotive technology." Marcus's mind was spinning. That's over a year away." "Correct. Because right now, you're still building foundations with Andreas. I'm still learning the mechanical side. But by summer of next year, you'll be ready for the next level. The engineering side. The design side. And then," Michael smiled, "then we'll see what you're really capable of." It was too much. Too big. Marcus felt like he was standing on a cliff edge, looking down at a drop he couldn't measure. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it, Richard suggested. Talk to your mom. Talk to Andreas. No pressure. Just a possibility. After the meeting, Richard walked Marcus to the elevator. You did good there. I barely said anything. You said enough. You were yourself. That's all you ever need to be. Richard pressed the elevator button. Marcus, I want you to understand something. What's happening here, it's not random. It's not charity. You're genuinely exceptional at something that matters. People are noticing. Doors are opening. And they're opening because you earned them. The elevator arrived. Marcus stepped in, then turned back. Richard. Yeah. Thank you. For all of this. For seeing me. For making this possible. Richard's expression softened. You fixed my car, remember? You made me see. I'm just trying to keep up with where that's leading. Marcus told his mom about the meeting that night over dinner, leftover spaghetti, at their small kitchen table. She listened quietly, the fork paused halfway to her mouth. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. That's incredible, baby. You don't sound excited. I am excited. I'm also terrified. Why? Patricia set down her fork. Because the higher you climb, the further you can fall. And because I've watched this city make promises to people like us before. Promises that don't always get kept. Richard's kept every promise so far. I know he has. And I'm grateful. But Marcus, you need to understand something. She reached across the table, taking his hand. Right now, you're a story. A feel-good story about the poor black kid who got a chance. And stories are great until people get bored of them. Until the next story comes along. That's not what this is. Maybe not. But you need to protect yourself. You need to work twice as hard, be twice as good, and never, ever assume that these opportunities are guaranteed. Because for people like us, nothing is guaranteed. We have to earn it over and over again. If you're watching this and thinking about your own dreams, about whether you have what it takes, whether you'll get the chance, hit that subscribe button. Because the next part of Marcus's journey will show you exactly what it costs to hold onto opportunity once you've got it. Marcus squeezed his mom's hand. I know. I promise I know. They finished dinner in comfortable silence. Outside their window, Detroit's east side hummed with evening life. Sirens in the distance. Cars passing. People living complicated lives in a complicated city. Marcus thought about Devin's words at lunch. About being lucky. About being chosen. And he thought about what Andreas had said. About preparation meeting chance. About earning what you get. Maybe it was both. Maybe life was always both. The next 18 months passed in a blur. Marcus turned 13. I started 8th grade. Continued training with Andreas 3 times a week, and his skills went from impressive to genuinely professional. Andreas started letting him lead diagnostic processes on customer cars, with supervision, but still. Marcus was touching vehicles worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and solving problems that stumped adult mechanics. Word continued to spread. A couple more news articles. A local TV segment. Marcus was invited to speak at a STEM career day at his school. Then at another school. Then at a city-sponsored event about youth success stories. He hated every second of the publicity, but understood it came with the territory. Richard explained it simply. Visibility matters. Not for ego, but because when people see you succeeding, they remember it's possible. That matters more than you think. Vanessa Chun from the gala made good on her offer. Marcus spent a week during spring break at her automation company learning about robotics and AI systems. It was completely different from automotive work, but the underlying principles, systems thinking, problem solving, logical troubleshooting, translated perfectly. And through it all, Marcus never stopped working. Never coasted. Because his mom's words echoed constantly, nothing is guaranteed. Earn it over and over again. Summer arrived. Marcus was 2 weeks away from starting Michael Chen's mentorship program at Apex Automotive. He was nervous and excited in equal measure. This was the next level. The actual engineering side. The design side. But then on a Wednesday morning in June, Richard called. His voice was different. Tight. Stressed. Marcus, I need to talk to you. Can you come to my office today? What's wrong? Just come. Please. Marcus took the bus downtown, mind racing through possibilities. What could have happened? Was the program canceled? Was Richard pulling out? Has Marcus done something wrong? When he reached Richard's office, the man looked exhausted. Older somehow. He gestured to Marcus to sit. I'm going to be straight with you, Richard said. There's a problem. Marcus felt his stomach drop. What kind of problem? The kind that happens when you try to do something good in a city that doesn't always reward good intentions. Richard rubbed his face. There's been backlash. Significant backlash. About you. About our arrangement. About whether this whole thing is appropriate. Backlash from who? Parents. Other business owners. People who think I'm getting publicity by using you. People who think this is all performative. That I'm trying to buy good press with a charity case. Richard's voice was bitter. There are accusations. That this isn't real mentorship. That it's exploitation. That I'm taking advantage of you and your family for my own image. Marcus felt cold. That's not true. I know it's not true. You know it's not true. Your mother knows it. Andreas knows it. But perception matters. And right now, there's a narrative forming that this whole thing is problematic. That I'm a white savior using a poor black kid to make myself look good. Could everything fall apart right when it was about to get better? Could other people's opinions and jealousy destroy something real and meaningful? Leave your answer in the comments, because what Richard says next will force Marcus to make the hardest decision of his young life. Marcus sat very still, processing Richard's words. What are you saying? That we have to stop? That I can't do the program? No, Richard's voice was firm. No, I'm not saying that. But I am saying we need to address this head on. Because if we don't, if we let this narrative build, it won't just hurt me. It'll hurt you. People will question your accomplishments. They'll say you didn't earn anything. That you're just a puppet in someone else's story. So what do? Richard stood, pacing to the window, overlooking Detroit. We tell the truth. Publicly. Clearly. We show people what this actually is. Not a charity case. Not a publicity stunt. But a genuine mentorship built on genuine talent. How? An interview. Print and video. You, me, Andreas, your mother if she's willing. We lay it all out. Show your work. Show your progress. Show that this is real. That you're not some prop. You're a kid with extraordinary ability who got an opportunity and ran with it. Marcus felt his chest tighten. People are going to hate that. They're going to say I'm showing off. Some will, but more will see the truth. And Marcus, Richard turned back from the window. You need to understand something. This is part of it. Part of being visible. Part of representing more than just yourself. It's not fair. You shouldn't have to justify your success. But if we want to protect what we've built, we have to fight for it. Marcus thought about his mom's words. About working twice as hard. About earning it over and over again. This was what she meant. This endless proving. This constant defense of something that should be simple. A talented kid getting a chance. I'll do it, Marcus said quietly. If it protects this. If it lets me keep learning. I'll do the interview. You're sure? Yeah, because they're not taking this from me. They don't get to decide. I don't deserve this. Richard smiled, not his corporate smile, but something genuine. All right then, we fight. The interview was scheduled for the following week. Detroit Metropolitan Magazine, with a video component for their website. The journalist, a woman named Kendra Matthews, was black, which Marcus hoped would help. Maybe she'd understand the complexity of this situation better than someone else. They met at Castellano Luxury Motors. The magazine wanted photos of Marcus actually working, actually demonstrating his skills. Andreas set up a Bentley Continental GT with a programmed fault in the fuel injection system, something complex enough to be impressive, but not so dangerous that Marcus could damage the vehicle. Kendra watched as Marcus ran diagnostics, traced the problem, and explained his reasoning step by step. Her photographer captured everything. Marcus tried not to look at the camera. Andreas supervises quietly. Richard watched from the side. After the demonstration, they sat in Andreas's office for the formal interview. Kendra had good questions. Not softball questions designed to make everyone look good, but real questions that dug into the complicated truth. Marcus, she asked, some people are saying this is exploitation. That Mr. Castellano is using you for his image. What do you say to that? Marcus looked straight at her. I'd say those people don't know what they're talking about. Richard didn't find me. I approached him. I fixed his car. I proved I could do something valuable. Everything after that has been built on that. On me showing up, doing the work, learning everything I can learn. Nobody's using anybody. We're just, search for words. We're just trying to match opportunity with ability. That's all this is. But doesn't it bother you that some people think you're just a charity case? Of course it bothers me. But I can't control what people think. I can only control what I do. And what I do is show up 3 times a week and work my ass off, work really hard to learn systems that most adults don't understand. If people want to call that charity, they can. I know what it really is. Kendra turned to Richard. Mr. Castellano, what do you gain from this arrangement? Richard didn't hesitate. I gained the satisfaction of knowing I didn't waste talent. That I saw something valuable and helped it grow instead of ignoring it. Do I get positive press from this? Sometimes. Do I also get criticism like we're dealing with now? Obviously. But here's what I actually gain that matters. I get to watch someone exceptional become more exceptional. I get to learn from Andreas how mentorship actually works. And I get to be part of something that reminds me that business success isn't the only thing that matters. Andreas spoke up then, his German accent thick with emotion. I will say something. I have trained mechanics for 30 years. Professionals. People with certifications and degrees. Marcus is better than 90% of them. Not because Richard gave him anything special, but because Marcus has a gift. Natural gift. What we give him is just an environment to let the gift grow. That's all. Marcus felt something hot behind his eyes. He blinked hard. Marcus, Kendra said gently, what do you want people to understand about your story? He took a breath. Thought about his father. About Morrison's garage. About standing in front of Richard's Rolls-Royce while people honked and Richard laughed. About every moment that led to this one. I want people to understand that talent doesn't look like they expect. Those kids from my neighborhood, kids who look like me, we're not broken. We're not charity cases waiting to be rescued. We're just people with abilities that don't always get seen. And when someone actually sees us, actually gives us a chance, we can do incredible things. That's not a special story. That should be every story. He looked at Kendra directly. I also want people to know that opportunity isn't a handout. It's a door. But you still have to walk through it. You still have to do the work. Richard opened the door. Andreas opened the door. Michaelchen opened the door. But I'm the one who walked through. I'm the one who showed up every single time. I'm the one who learned. That's not charity. That's partnership. That's how the world is supposed to work. The room was quiet for a moment. Kendra's pen had stopped moving. She was just listening. I think we have everything we need, she finally said. Thank you. All of you. This is a good story. A real story. The article came out 3 weeks later. Front page of the Detroit Metropolitan Magazine. The Mechanic's Apprentice, Marcus Webb and the Cost of Opportunity. The photos were striking. Marcus in Andreas's garage, tools in hand, face focused. The video component showed him actually diagnosing the Bentley, explaining systems with casual expertise that belied his age. But it was Marcus's quotes that people remembered. Social media lit up. Some criticism remained, people determined to see exploitation no matter what, but the overwhelming response was different. Support. Recognition. Other stories poured in from people who'd faced similar skepticism. Business leaders started reaching out to Richard about mentorship programs. Other kids reached out to Marcus asking how to find opportunities. Teachers shared the article with students. And 2 days after publication, Marcus's phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Hello. Marcus Webb. The voice was professional, female. This is Dr. Elena Rodriguez from Stanford University's Engineering Department. I'm calling because I read your story, and I'd like to talk to you about something. Marcus's heart started racing. Okay. We run a summer program for exceptional high school students interested in engineering. I know you're only 13, but based on what I've read and some inquiries I've made with Michael Chun, I'd like to extend an invitation. We've never accepted a middle school student before, but we've also never encountered someone with your demonstrated ability. Would you be interested in discussing this? Would you believe it if your wildest dreams suddenly became real? If impossible turned possible because you refused to give up? Drop a comment with your biggest dream, because Marcus's journey proves that sometimes standing up, speaking truth, and doing the work actually changes everything. 5 years later, Marcus Webb stood in Andreas's garage, now 17 years old, 6 feet tall, hands still permanently stained with grease. But today those hands held something else, an acceptance letter. MIT, full scholarship, mechanical engineering program. Andreas stood beside him, older now, grayer, but still the same patient mentor who taught a 12-year-old kid that mastery meant something. You did it, Andreas said simply. We did it, Marcus corrected. Richard had driven over when Marcus called. Now he stood there too, and for once the slick businessman looked genuinely emotional. Your father would be so proud. I know, Marcus said. I think about him every day. What will you study? Andreas asked. Automotive systems, electric vehicle integration, and Marcus smiled. Mentorship program development. I want to create pathways for other kids. Kids like I was. Because you're right, Andreas. We lift each other. We pass knowledge. We create chances because someone created chances for us. That's how it works, Andreas agreed. Marcus looked around the garage. 5 years ago, this place seemed impossible. A world that kids like him weren't supposed to access. Now it felt like home. Like the place where he learned not just about engines, but about who he could become. His phone buzzed. A text from his mom. I'm so proud of you, baby. We're going to celebrate tonight. Your choice where? Marcus smiled. His mom had quit her second job 2 years ago. Richard had helped her find a better position with normal hours and actual benefits. Nothing extravagant. Nothing that felt like charity. Just a door opened. A path cleared. Marcus, Richard said, I want you to know something. That day on Woodward Avenue, that was the luckiest breakdown I ever had. Not because you fixed my car. Because you reminded me what actually matters. You changed my life just as much as I changed yours. I just fixed your car, Marcus said. No, you did a lot more than that. You showed me that talent doesn't wear a suit. That genius shows up in torn sneakers. That opportunity should go to people who earn it, not just people who look like they deserve it. You taught me to see better. That's worth more than any car repair. Marcus felt that familiar heat behind his eyes. Thanks, Richard, for seeing me, for taking a chance. Thanks for making me see, for taking that chance and running with it. They stood there, 3 men from completely different worlds, brought together by a broken engine and a kid brave enough to say, I can fix this. A millionaire who'd learned to look past his assumptions. A German master mechanic who believed in paying forward. And a 17-year-old who'd walked through every door open for him and then opened doors for others. Come on, Andreas said, breaking the moment. Celebration, yes? But first, there's a Rolls-Royce ghost outside with a mysterious electrical fault. Marcus, what do you think? One more diagnosis before you leave for MIT. Marcus laughed. Yeah, I think I can handle that. As they walked toward the service bay, Marcus paused, looked back at the garage that had changed his life, at the tools that had taught him precision, at the cars that had taught him systems, to the people who had taught him that who you are matters more than where you come from. And he remembered that moment on Woodward Avenue, standing in front of a millionaire who was laughing at him, making a choice to stand his ground, to say, I can fix this, to refuse to be invisible. That moment had changed everything, not because Richard was generous, not because Marcus was lucky, but because when talent met opportunity, when preparation met chance, when potential met belief, something powerful happened. That's not a special story, Marcus thought. That should be every story. But for now, it was his story, and he was going to make it count. He walked into the garage, ready for the next problem to solve, the next system to understand, the next moment to prove that 12-year-old kid right, the kid who believed he could fix something nobody else could. Because he could. He did. And he would keep doing it for the rest of his life. If this story moved you, if it made you believe that standing up for yourself matters, that talent deserves opportunity, that one moment can change everything, share it. Drop a comment about your own moment. The time you stood your ground. The time you said, I can do this, when everyone doubted you. And subscribe. Because stories like Marcus Webb's, stories of courage, persistence, and refusing to be invisible, these are the stories that remind us what's possible when we see people for who they really are. Remember, talent doesn't wear a suit. Genius shows up in torn sneakers. And the person who changes the world might be the one everyone else dismissed. See them. Believe them. Give them a chance. That's how we build a better world. One open door, one kept promise, one Marcus Webb at a time.